A zero is the point where the graph crosses or touches the x-axis. Multiplicity is the number of times a zero occurs. So if you have x minus c raised to the end equals 0, and when you solve it, x will equal c, we could say that the c is a zero of multiplicity n. So using a zero's multiplicity, you can tell whether the zero is crossing or touching the x-axis, which does make things a lot easier when you're trying to graph it. So let's look at what that means. If the zero has an odd multiplicity, the graph crosses the x-axis at the zero. So let's say it's starting underneath it, the graph is underneath it and going up. If the zero is odd, has an odd multiplicity, it's going to cross and then keep going up. So if it's underneath it, it's going to go up, cross it, and keep going up. Versus if it was above it, it's going to go down, cross it, and keep going down. So if it's an odd multiplicity, it will just cross, the graph will just cross the zero, like what these two are showing here. If the zero has an even multiplicity, the graph touches the x-axis at that zero. So if it's above it, it's going to go down, just touch it, kind of just bounce off of it, and then go back up. So if it's above it, it's going to go down, touch it, and go back up. Or if it's below it, it's going to go up, touch it, and then come back down, just kind of like bounce off of it. So if it's an even multiplicity, it's just going to touch the zero on the x-axis and then go back on the same side like this. So let's look at a couple examples. We're going to find the zeros and their multiplicities of the following function. So when you're finding the zeros, you want to put it in factor form because that does make it easier. And this is already in factor form, so it makes it even easier for us. So we're going to set each individual part equal to 0. So I'm going to have x to the fourth equals 0. X minus 2 cubed equals 0. And x plus 1 squared equals 0. So I'm going to find the 0 and the multiplicity of each one of these three. So let's start off here. X to the fourth equals 0. Just take the fourth root of both sides. And I'm going to end up with x equaling 0. So this is a 0, which is just 0. And its exponent is a 4 here. So it means this has a multiplicity of 4 because it occurs 4 times. And since it has an even multiplicity, it touches the x-axis. Now let's look at this one. X minus 2 cubed equals 0. So I'm going to take the cube root of both sides to clear out the cube. And I'm going to get x minus 2 equals 0. And then I just add 2, and I'm going to get x equals 2. So the 0 here is a 2, and since its exponent out here is a 3, that means it occurs 3 times. So this has multiplicity 3, and since it's an odd multiplicity, it's going to cross the x-axis. And then lastly, we have x plus 1 squared equals 0. Take the square root of both sides. X plus 1 equals 0. Then subtract 1 over. X equals negative 1. So this is the 0. And since it's a square on the outside, this means this has a multiplicity of 2. And since it's an even multiplicity, it touches the x-axis. Now that's all this is asking, but what would that look like on a graph? To be honest, 100% accuracy for just this information is not enough, but we can get a really good idea of what it looks like. Pretty close, in fact. So the first thing we want to do is we want to plot our intercepts on the x-axis. So we can plot negative 1, positive 2, and 0. So negative 1, 0, and positive 2. Now, how is the graph going to go? Well, Easy way we could tell is just look at the degree of the polynomial itself. We have a 4 here, a 3 here, and a 2 here in this factored form. So since it's in factored form, we can just add the exponents together. So 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 2 is 9. So this is a 9th degree polynomial. It's odd, and its leading coefficient is positive because there's no negative out here. So since it's a positive leading coefficient and an odd degree polynomial, it's going to start low, go up, do something, and then go up. So let's start here. We know it's going to start low, so it's going to be right here, and when it reaches -1, it's going to touch it because that's what it says here. So it means it's going to bounce off, and then when it gets to 0, it says touch again. So it's going to bounce off of this as well, and then it's going to get to 2 where it crosses. So we're just going to cross. So it's going to look like this. It's going to go up, bounce down, go back up again, bounce down, go back up, and then cross like so. Now, is this 100% accurate? Probably not, but it gives us the basic shape and what it kind of looks like. So we have a really good idea of what this graph should look like, just from this information here. And that is what finding a 0 entails, how its multiplicity is discovered, and if you need to graph it, what the touching and crossing mean to the graph.